Hi, and welcome to my walkthrough of the St. Louis Outlet Mall and the former St. Louis Mills Mall. This video was recorded on June 8th of 2019. As of tomorrow, June 18th, 2019, the Mills is officially closed. Here you can see I entered through neighborhood 2. This mall is separated out into 6 neighborhoods. Coming around the corner here, you can see the information desk, along with the first cavernous hallway of this nearly mile-long mall. So to the right is the first food establishment I came across entering the mall, and taking a look inside here, you can see that not only is it entirely abandoned, it was also left a huge mess. That's a common theme at the Mills in St. Louis. A number of the businesses that were left abandoned or closed were very messy on the inside. So as I mentioned when I came in, the Mills is separated into neighborhoods. As far as I can tell, all the Mills malls there were a number across the country. So they're separated into neighborhoods based on seemingly random pieces of art and culture. I think part of St. Louis's was based on the World's Fair, but it was impersonal enough that it didn't make an impression on me. You can see this really interesting architecture though here through the Shakespeare in the Park portion. It's gaudy and ugly, but unique for a mall. I also thought the ceiling was kind of interesting because it is just that weird vaulted studio ceiling type, but it's all painted to match the area of the mall. So this mall had, I believe, 16 anchor stores at one point. To the right here is what was a Ross Dress for Less just about 2 months ago. It's obviously closed now. And another empty food establishment. There were a ton of those through this mall. There were more places to eat here, or formerly there were, than just about any mall I'd been to. Looking in, this business was one of the only occupied spaces left in the Mills. I wasn't exactly sure what was there, but it looked like some sort of office space or maybe a security office. There are a number of different theories on why this mall's really gone down the drain since its inception in 2003. It's a really young, dead mall for a few, what seems to me like obvious reasons. It's huge, it's gaudy. It was kind of built as a second-rate theme park sort of situation. There were a number of entertainment centers or areas for children, including an ice rink, a skate park, a NASCAR-themed raceway, indoor glow-in-the-dark golf, and a number of just other various attractions. And it's huge. It was built to be just full of people. I went in one of the bathrooms while I was here. You can see the hallway for some of the restrooms that way. They were disgusting, number one, so I didn't record them, but I believe there were 18 stalls in the women's bathroom I was in. And my spouse said there were a similar number in the men's, indicating that this mall really was built for quite a few people to be in at one time. Aside from the number of seating, which I thought was really interesting, is there's just chairs and trash cans all over this mall. I'm not sure really what the point is of all that, but it's there and no one's using it. So here we're in another themed neighborhood. This is neighborhood 3. There's an empty Hibbett Sports. I did comment while I was there how odd I think it is that you could have a themed Claire's that's got like flames on the top or whatever. I thought these themes were really odd. Interesting for maybe a temporary situation, but very odd for a permanent installation. like a shopping mall. I watched a few videos of this mall when it was busy from around 2006 to 2007, and one of the most major differences I noticed were the kiosks that used to line the middle of these long walkways. They really made it look a lot more full. There was also a train that you could ride around the mall. Obviously nothing like that was here. A lot of people blame this mall's failure on other malls in the area closing around the time this mall opened. I believe the Jamestown Mall closed in 2005. This mall opened in 2003. And people blame the teenagers that flooded here from that mall for killing a lot of the business by being loud and rowdy and making the mall a non-family friendly place, which, as I mentioned before, this mall is very much set up for children. I saw some other people from the area claiming that when the teenagers were given curfews and were no longer allowed to be in the malls after certain periods of time, that was what killed these malls. Here's the Ice Zone, which is the official practice area for the St. Louis Blues, who just won the cup. I thought that was really interesting. I did go in and wander around, but it wasn't a particularly film-worthy experience. There were people in there practicing, and I thought it would be rude to record them. But as far as I can tell, the St. Louis Blues contract here expires this year, so they won't be practicing in the mills anymore. I read a few articles about the closing of this mall, and it looks like everyone's pretty well been evicted. The ice rink and a couple of the other larger anchors are going to stay open, but everything else is really expected to be closed, and the inside of this mall is going to be basically abandoned. And there are talks of it being turned into some sort of sports complex, which I think could be interesting. There's a skate park that was still really active here, which I thought was very cool. The skate park and the ice rink were the only places I really saw anyone. You can see this arcade style machine over there. I'll go back to it in a minute. This was the NASCAR race area. I tried to get in, but the gap in the bottom of the floor wasn't really large enough, and I didn't want to get dirty rolling around on the floor here. So these arcade style machines were kind of everywhere in the mall. They were really the only thing in the middle aisles other than chairs and the occasional back massager. I thought they were really interesting because they had current items inside, like AirPods and iPhones and Xbox One controllers. And I just kind of thought it was interesting to think of someone coming here and restocking these machines with current items to win, as if anyone was coming here to, I guess, play the arcade games in the middle of the aisle. I know Dan Bell's mentioned them a few times in his videos, but you can see in a couple spots these vinyl coverings over the empty stores. And something I thought that was really interesting was when I was reading some of the older articles about when this mall first opened, those vinyl covers used to be used to cover up stores that were still being built and were yet to be opened. And I'm assuming once this mall was auctioned or purchased as the St. Louis Outlet Mall, those were pulled out of some back room and put up to cover the empty storefronts to make things look a little more lively. Here you can see another example of how everything was just trashed in this mall. There are a few of these weird window installations in empty storefronts. I'm assuming they were there to make the businesses look like there was some sort of, activity inside it all. So here we're in the food court. This Sbarro was really interesting to me. I actually came here probably about 3 weeks before I did this recording, and I talked to a security guard who'd worked there for I don't know how long. He was very nice, and he spoke with my friend and I about some of the wilder things he'd seen in his time working here in the dead mall. You could see back there in the Sbarro there were a couple of large metal ovens, and I know that he said that a couple young men came in and tried to take those out of the mall, and he told them to leave. Aside with that, there were a number of homeless people that had been caught living in here. He mentioned it happened a few times. He'd come in well before the mall was supposed to open, that he'd just find someone, wandering around who'd stayed the night. So this is the food court as a whole, and I mentioned how large this mall was, and I think the food court really exemplifies that. Just the number of empty storefronts and the number of empty chairs was just excessive and almost impressive. I read a really interesting, I think it was a Yelp review by a mom from 2004 about this mall taking her kids here, and she mentioned in it how the line for Panda Express more closely resembled a line for a theme park ride at Six Flags than it did for a mall food vendor, because it was so long and there were so many people. That obviously isn't the case now. There are just numerous unidentifiable empty restaurants. I think this used to be a Johnny Rockets, just because I know that that's more of a sit-down kind of situation. So there was a cinema here as of last year that was still operating. It's closed now. I thought that this weird gate was kind of interesting, because it didn't do anything to keep anyone out of there. I also thought that this little sign was funny, because I didn't see anyone trying to do that in the entire time I was here. I would say in the time that I was here, I saw maybe 6 people who weren't me or my spouse. I did see another man taking photos here. He looked a little more serious than I did, and I would love to see what he got, because this mall is an absolute wonder as far as it goes, like, visually interesting. So off camera, I did try a couple of these doors just to see if they'd open. They were all locked as far as I could tell. But you can see, again, just the sheer size of this theater. So this restaurant to the right here, I thought was very interesting, because it was left open. So it used to be a place called Vera Bees, which from what I could gather online was a locally owned St. Louis restaurant. Obviously it closed now, but as I came around this corner here, I saw that this door was just open, so I slid in just to take a look around. It looked like you probably could have gotten back to the kitchen, but I didn't really want to get back that far in here. It was really dark, and the floor was very, very sticky. You can see it's kind of shiny in this video. That is a little grainy. But in the audio I dropped out of my recording, you could hear my Crocs just slapping against the floor because they were just sticking so badly. Here's the Panda Express that the mom talked about the line being so long to. As you can see now, it's just been left in disrepair, much like everything else at this mall has been. Upon its inception, this really was more of a tourist attraction than it was anything aimed at locals. I don't live in St. Louis, and I never have, so I remember coming to the Mills as a kid with my parents and thinking it was the coolest place on earth. It is huge, and as a child, it was especially huge. And the colors and everything were just extremely exciting for a kid. But for anyone who is local here, they didn't have a lot of the stores that you'd want in a normal shopping center. And on top of that, it's not a particularly accessible mall. It is all one floor. It is a circle or an oval with a kind of a figure 8 sort of situation going on. This hallway up here to the right of the Play Center does connect back to that information desk. But it's huge, and it's really difficult to navigate or even remember where anything is. So it didn't do super great with the people who lived here, on top of the other issues, and now it's just kind of fallen into disrepair. This floor again was very sticky, and there was a half-empty Panera Bread cup there too, which I thought was funny. But this whole area was just really, really sticky. Everything looks kind of nice on camera, but it didn't feel great. It felt dirty. And that was kind of a common theme with this mall, was that everything looked pretty decent, but upon closer inspection, it was just super nasty. I did think this gave a really interesting vantage point to kind of seeing the spans of the mall, though, a little better. And I cut out the 95 times I tripped over my feet. So there you can see where we came in at, all the way over there. And this is the hallway I just came from down by the food court. It's just empty storefront after empty storefront, and there's not a person to be found. So over by the ice rink, there was an operational Wetzel's Pretzels. I'm assuming it only stays open because of the various teams that practice here, and it's the only place to get a snack now, even though there's all those empty, businesses. I thought it was interesting that they left this POS just running. I played with it a little earlier, and I didn't think I'd be able to do anything with it now, but I did think it was kind of fun that it was just left going. It was very poorly calibrated, so I'm sorry that I wasn't great at using it. I always think that's fun in these dead mall situations, though, where there's just absolutely nothing there, but so many businesses have just left pieces and parts. Their ticket printer was still left, there was a cooler here. It always feels like in these sort of situations that the people just walked out. Now this is something my spouse found while I wasn't paying attention. Just pieces and parts from different businesses, which I thought was very cool. Along with the trash cans that seem to litter the walkways and the benches that are just every 20 feet, there were a couple of these children's ride situations in the middle of the walkway as well. They were terrifying. This mall was very empty, very large, and those things all made just horrible noises. One of them laughed, which hearing a really loud, obviously tinny, fake children's giggle down a hall is not super fun. This one had a four-wheeler that made revving noises, but it was not in the greatest of shape, and it was just horrible. Also, the water bottles here were really overpriced. I thought that was a little appalling. So this business here on the right, which is a clothing store that I didn't pay a lot of attention to, I did think it was really interesting that they had their gate open, and there was a security alarm going off on the inside of it, which wasn't loud enough to really show up on my phone that well, but it was just left open. I mean, had I wanted to walk in there and grab something, I don't think there's anyone in this mall to stop someone from doing that. We left everything pretty much where we found it, but it wouldn't take very much incentive or effort for someone to take whatever they want from this building. So Lorenzo Menswear was one of the few businesses left open, and it didn't appear like they were packing anything up in the time we were there. They sold some really interesting suits, but my husband wasn't interested. Although I was kind of partial to the glittery gold one you can see in the window there. There's the hallway to another set of these bathrooms. I know I mentioned that there were a lot of stalls in the one that I went into. The number of bathrooms was just crazy too. I think there was one in every neighborhood. Now that's a Burlington coat factory, which is still open, but they've moved everything away from the part of the store that touches the mall. And I've seen that before in dying malls where they'll kind of try to cut off the anchor stores from the body of the mall. But I don't know, there's something weird about being able to see in and see that it was still there, but just trying so hard to pretend like it wasn't attached to this just dying ship. I really like these light fixtures that are kind of everywhere in the entrances. A lot of the architectural just accoutrement here was really, really interesting. It feels like, from my viewpoint, it feels like a lot of effort goes into making these malls and into making them, I don't want to say aesthetically pleasing because that's a gross overestimation, but interesting. I'll give them interesting because I mean, look at that. That's super wild. And if there were people here and vendors and kids and, you know, little trains and whatever, I mean, it was really fun being here as a child. And even my mom, I asked her about it and she recalls this place, you know, being somewhere to be, which it just isn't now. So we're in zone 1 at this point, and it seems like it was pretty much bought out by this church. I haven't kept up with the drama, but I know that Hope Church has been established here for a number of years, and it looks like they've got a few classrooms set up and some storage facilities along with their main church, and they're being evicted along with the other tenants. And I don't know how that's going to work out for them. Their pastors already publicly stated a few things about not being happy with the way that the mall's handling it and refusing to leave. Here you can see the church's front. The lights were on. I walked through them all twice before I did a recording. The lights were on when we went through the first time, but they were off at this point. This was really fun. This was the former map of the mall. I don't know how old it was, but it's obviously fairly old because none of these places were even remotely close to being open. Other than Lorenzo's and the Wetzel's Pretzels. They're on there. One of the other few remaining businesses here is this furniture store, which I know they're in the process of moving. I spoke with the gentleman who was working there on my last visit here. And as far as I could tell from some of the older videos, they've been here for quite a while. So a lot of these stores that are still holding on have been in this mall for years. I'd love to know how business is at some of these places in dying malls, especially the smaller, independently owned places. I thought this zone was a lot less interesting than some of the others. It really felt kind of flat when compared to, you know, the fire-themed one or the Shakespeare in the Park. It was just a lot of beige and a lot of trash cans. Something else I wasn't really able to get, you know, done justice on camera was how loud the lights were. They sounded like wasps, I guess bees. They sounded like bees above us. It was just so loud. It was annoying. So one of the anchors I neglected to mention, kind of on purpose, was this Cabela's. So when I was younger, this Cabela's was the place to be. There are live animals still there. They have a small aquarium, an alligator snapping turtle. But this entrance used to be like very impressive. It was open, and you'd walk into this huge store, and there was the mountain with the taxidermy animals. And to anyone who's not from the Midwest, I guess this probably sounds a little morbid, not exactly like cool, but I always thought these sporting goods stores were really, really awesome when I was a kid. And now it's completely to the point where you cannot get in from the mall. And you'll see when I leave, their parking lot was pretty full. Like, the Cabela's has a good customer base. I was here on a Friday afternoon, the last time I came, and it was busy then too. So Zone 1 did have, I would say, probably the most businesses that seemed like they were open recently. That's the bathrooms again. There was what looked like it was a tax consultant business. Whatever this Wise Impact place was, at least still had their sign up, which is more than most of the closed businesses here. But now we're going back into neighborhood 2, which is the neighborhood we came in at. So at 26 minutes in, we have made the full, or almost the full loop. It took probably closer to 45 minutes for me to walk this whole thing, because it is a very, very, very large mall. It would definitely be a little unwieldy trying to shop here on a regular basis, and as far as I'm concerned, I understand why people who lived here didn't bother coming here, because all the pomp and circumstance of it doesn't really make up for the just lacking of the businesses that people want to go to and the convenience of being able to get in and get out. There were a lot of outlet stores in this mall when it was open or operational. This was the Justice, which was one of the creepier empty storefronts. I thought those lights were just kind of bizarre. And I'd also never seen a Justice that was this big. I think they've only ever seen the corner stores in smaller malls. So before I left, I did want to get this shot here of the middle section and how huge it was again. And then I also checked out the information desk. I didn't look very closely at most of these brochures, but they did look like they were relatively recent, if not up to date entirely. What I thought was very interesting was, much like the Vera Bees, the information desk was also left entirely just open. You'll see a lot of locked cabinets and locked sliding, containment areas, but none of them were locked. They were all very easily, accessible. The little flappy door wasn't locked at all. It was very odd. So I had my husband hold the camera while I drove around the outside of the mall, just to get a real idea of how huge it was. And also the fact that the weird decor doesn't end on the inside. It continues out here. And just the effort that went into making this mall look this way is just so much. It was just so much effort that made it looks like garbage. Maybe it was cool in 2003, but it's aged so poorly. That's the Ross Dress for Less that you could see inside when I walked by it. And then there you can see the entrance I came through at. So let me know if there's any other malls you would be interested in me kind of doing walkthroughs of, like the Chesterfield Mall or anything in the St. Louis, Iowa, Illinois area. But thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're interested in seeing more. Bye.